Welcome to Tea, Toast, and Theology, all things nourishing, presented by The Table. Find us on the web at the-table.church.
Okay? And I want to point out something about the peer pressure thing first. Um, I think I shared with you my friend, his experience with leadership conference. He was out in California doing a leadership conference, and there were all these big leaders in that conference. And they gave them all these things, little pieces, and they were not able to do anything with it. And then they gave them a little bit of a direction, and then everyone came up with all these creative things. You remember that story? Mm-hmm. Now, we do get to live in a world where we have points of reference, right? And Dennis, you're absolutely right that sometimes we think there is no peer pressure, but we do live with peer pressure. Amanda just shared that this morning, right? That there was all this peer pressure on her, right? Which may have given her reason to wonder, like, which thing do I value most, right? And at the end, she valued honesty over, right? And we do that all the time, right? What you shared, Barbara, right? Those are very difficult decisions in life when you have a certain value competing with another value inside you, and you have to make a decision, and you just do not know where to go. And then sometimes you make a decision, and even then you keep thinking about the decision that you had to make, and it troubles you, right? Because there were competing values that you had to sort of make a choice over, right? And a lot of it comes from the points of references in which we live, whether it is peer pressure, right? Even rebellion comes out of peer pressure. Isn't that interesting? Because we are looking at something and saying, no, that is not me. Why? Because there is so much pressure to be a certain way, right? And to be able to say that, no, that is not me, is in reference to that point of reference, right? So everything that we do has some kind of context in which we are, right? I love the fact that when people learn about Jesus, what is their first reaction? Their first reaction is to figure out in their point of reference, where does he fit in, right? Mm-hmm. If they are impressed by Elijah, or if they have a problem with Elijah, right? Either way, they are wondering if he is Elijah, right? Mm-hmm. Now, it may be that Herod was impressed by Jesus, or it may be that he was really fearful that he got him beheaded. Now, is he back? Right? Just imagine if you had done something like that and there was news of this guy who had similar things to say as John, you would be wondering, oh my God, I'm in trouble if this guy is back. Right? So out of fear also. But it's all about where your reference point is, right? And I love what you said, Sanwa, that what kind of a mother would ask the daughter something as heinous as that, right? And as graphic as that, right? And it is true, whether we like it or not, it is true that there is evil in the world. Sometimes when we live with the worldview, with the point of reference of it's all good, we forget that there is evil in the world. My wife lives in the worldview of everything is good. No, I'm not kidding. She grew up with that. She grew up in a good home, right? Where everything was good, right? And she was taught that everything is good and just have compassion for people because they are maybe just off the track a little, right? But they're all good, right? And in some ways, we want to do that for our next generations. And it is very difficult when we come across this thing where we have to stop and say, no, there is a thing called evil. Right? Because there is no other explanation. Right? Not to make it personal, but I'd like to share this. You know, this week was finally I am out of the Episcopal Church, right? And to that news, my wife said, I never thought that there could be this evil. Right? She said, I never believed that. For that reason, for her, the transition we made 6 months ago, and for us to have bought the house a few months before that, that was a very difficult transition. Why? Because in her point of reference, evil doesn't exist. You see what I'm saying? But there is evil in the world, right? And it does come out. And might I say, sometimes it can be generational. What do you think the daughter learned from that mother? Right? Right? And that is why I am so happy that we are having these conversations. As Peggy said this morning, thank you for such an honest time. That we can honestly share that, guess what? Paul's thing. We are all struggling. We are all sinners. And this thing called Christianity is not done in one go. Some people think, oh, I received the baptism, I'm all good now. No, we struggle with this thing in life. The good and evil struggle is on, my friends. Right? All the time. All the time it's going on. But the beautiful thing is what Dennis said, is that the grace of God has been lavished upon us through the person of Jesus Christ. That even in the midst of all of our struggles, which are great, right? We cannot live in this space thinking that the battle is won and it is all over. That, my friends, Paul was very clear, John was very clear, all the biblical writers were very clear. That will happen when we see God face to face. Right? Till that moment, we are living in a time where there is good and there is evil, and that cosmic struggle is going on. And today's story is about that struggle. Right? And I thought it was interesting that when we look at this story, oftentimes, almost all through biblical times and now, we like to look at this story and say, oh, you know, what an egomaniac Herod was. Right? He only cared about the fact that how he was to be viewed. Right? True. And yet in this story, there is a very strong subtext of Herod's struggle. Herod's struggle. He did like who John was. He did care for what John had to offer. And yet, there are other competing things where he is competing. And yes, eventually he gave in to what we would consider evil, because it is evil, right? But there was a struggle Even in Herod's head, even in his heart, there was a struggle going on. And so, my friends, it is proper for us Christians to recognize that. So that is one point that I wanted to make. That it is proper for us to recognize that there is the struggle of good and evil. That is a point of reference, right? Where we struggle with our values. I remember when, 2 weeks ago when Julie led us in this exercise that you all did last week a little bit of as well, she asked us this question. After we wrote down our values, she asked us this question. Now, which one would you be willing to sacrifice? Right? Or which one do you think will endure? Because if you are willing to sacrifice, then that particular value is your value, yes, but it may not be that core value, the foundational thing on which you stand, right? Because you might think it is, right? So for Herod, right, obviously life was not the foundational value, right? His own profile was, and how he appeared, was a huge value. Talking to teenagers, which I loved yesterday. We had a great time. I hope you can say that, Daniel, right? We had a wonderful time? Yes? Okay. We had a wonderful time. I mean, these guys were tough on the foosball thing. Right? But one of the things that one of these teenagers said was this thing about appearances. Why do we have to worry about appearances? And the other one said, it is hard. It is hard to always think about, okay, when I become an adult, right, I will need a job and I will need to keep up with everything I have. You see? And might I say that this is a genuine struggle. So I love the truth that in that conversation, right? The young people are saying, listen, this is tough, where you have to live up to certain standards just to show that you are successful, just to fit in, just to say that this is, right? So what are we doing in that group? Whether it is with the youth or right here on Saturday, on Wednesday, what are we doing? So I thought about, as Chris is leading us through this whole exercise of like when you are going to be a community, as we are having these conversations about value, what does it mean to be a community? What kind of values are going to be our foundational values? What kind of reference point are we going to have for this world? Because, my friends, this is what I reflect on. What happened yesterday is awful. But might I say also that it is not something that we could not anticipate, if we are honest. Because when you hype up from all sides, when you hype up fear, right? When you hype up difference in a way that cannot be accepted or cannot be accepting of the other, right? We end up in that mother's frame of reference, where the person you disagree with has to be eliminated. That's what happens. When we pump ourselves through fear and sometimes through righteousness, right? Because a lot of people, both sides, think, I'm right, this is the right thing to do. How can somebody be living this lifestyle? How could somebody make these choices? How could somebody not believe this, that, or the other? And we get all hyped up. And we lose the core value that Jesus identified. And you know what that core value is? He came to give us life, everlasting life, and life abundant. Right? He came to us to give us life, everlasting life, and life abundant. That is the wholeness of life. That is what Jesus came to give us. And sometimes when we hype up things, we end up losing sight of what is it that builds up life. My friends, last night after hearing the news, I was grateful to God for our community. Because trust me, it is not easy to hold all different views together in a community. You see what I'm saying? Right? But to have, we have never said don't have your own views. Right? We have always said have your own views, but your core foundational view has to be those of Jesus Christ. And that is life. That is life. We cannot speak of community together when we think that we will only have peace, we will only have joy, we will only have hope, we will only have faith if you were not part of our community. I mean, we have all been there, haven't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that's why we are here, actually. Right? That is exactly why we are here. Right?
Yep.
Because this concept of religion, concept of piety, concept of this is, we'll be all very pious if you were not part of this equation. Mm-hmm. Right? Leads to events like last night. And we, as the people of God, my friends, have a lot of work to do. That last night's event was a confirmation how much the table is needed in the world. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
Because we need to pull together all perspectives, all people, and say, yes, we can disagree with each other. We will go at it. I remember right after the thing, I went to Penny's house, and Penny opened the door, and one of the first things that came out of her mouth was, "Did you hear the news?" And then she went on to say what had happened. And my response to her thing was, well, you know, people forget there's a reason why we have elections, so that we don't have to resort to stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. That is the whole point of elections, that we value life and we can disagree and we can actually vote for, and then the core value in democracy is that we learn to live with difference. Mm-hmm. I knew 8 years ago that we were in a big trouble when I heard the words, "not my president." Mm-hmm. That whole thing. Now, you can disagree with political views, right? But at the end, the core value of coming together, having a space where, like Jesus, around the table, go at it. Be Peter. Be Judas. Be whoever you wish to be. But don't ever go against life or any of the values that support life. For that is at the core of being. Christians. So, my friends, today I just want to say we have got a lot of work to do. And if you ever needed a reason to talk to your neighbors and your friends about the table, you just got it yesterday. Okay? If you ever needed it, you have it. Right? There sometimes in life we reach some points of clarity. And I feel, my friends, in the coming days, I mean, all of us can imagine all the different possibilities that will happen, right? Someone will blame so-and-so, someone will blame so-and-so. You switch this channel and they are going at so-and-so. You switch that channel, they are going at so-and-so. Everyone will be like the mother of that woman, wanting someone's head on the platter. And in that situation, my friends, we all have the responsibility to be the table where diverging views come together and uphold life. And that can only happen, my friends, if we are rooted in Jesus Christ. And if we truly believe what Dennis said, that verse. Dennis, if you would like to read that verse again.
The forgiveness of our trespasses according to the riches of his grace that he lavished upon us.
Amen?
Amen.
Thank you for tuning in. Please like, comment, and subscribe.